Recently on the channel, I've gone back to read both Pre-Timeskip and Post-Timeskip to give them an overall fair rating. And at the end of my Post-Timeskip video, I hinted towards me putting them up against each other to see which one is better. And today, that is what we are here for. In today's video, I'm going to be comparing both Pre-Timeskip and Post-Timeskip to see which one is better. But before I get into the video, if you guys like content like this, you know what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe, as I do post content like this regularly, and in my opinion, it's a win-win. You guys show support and I'll push out more videos like this in the near future. Whether it's One Piece, other anime, or just fiction in general, in due time I plan on covering it, so be there when I go there. But I feel like that's enough of my rambling. Why don't I get into the video and find out which part of this series was better, Pre-Timeskip or Post-Timeskip? Now before I get into the video, I need to set out the rules so you guys know what I'm ranking this by. The first rule is I'll be comparing arcs of similar sizes, so just because, I don't know, Zou happens whenever Thriller Bark happen, I'm not going to have those two go up against each other because the longevity of each arc is a little bit different. This only happened like once in the video, so it's nothing too drastic. The second rule will be me ranking every arc in the exact same way I ranked them in my other videos, so the way how I had the Marineford saga as one whole saga, I'm going to keep it that exact same way in this video. So if you don't really understand what I'm talking about, especially go back and watch the other previous videos so you get a better grip and an understanding of what I'm talking about. And the third rule will be me looking at this more objectively, so I'll be covering everything the arcs do right and wrong in terms of writing and enjoyment. I don't expect everybody to agree with me, but I think a lot of people will get my gist on what I'm trying to say. So that being said, why don't I get into the video and see which one was better, Pre-Timeskip or Post-Timeskip? First up on the list, we have the East Blue Saga versus Return to Sabody. Now I want to start this off with the negatives of these arcs and then go on to the positives. The negatives of the East Blue Saga mainly comes from Oda still learning how to hone his pen, and Syrup Village has this on full display. Kuro doesn't feel like a proper antagonist, his motivations were okay, but he doesn't feel as impactful as the villains that come after him, and his lackeys, well, they were even worse. Out of all of his lackeys, the best one by far in my eyes was the Django, because the rest felt really lackluster and they weren't anything too spectacular. And in my opinion, the exact same thing can be said about Orange Town. It didn't really move me, and I found Buggy as a very lacking villain at the time, and he felt more of a nuisance than an actual threat. The very last negative I have about the East Blue Saga, which only pertains to Orange Town and Syrup Village, was the feeling of nothing happening when things were happening. This complaint is definitely more aimed towards the anime, but in the manga I did feel it a tiny bit as well. It's like things would happen and like it would just feel stagnant for a little bit, but obviously things are happening inside the story, but it just feels a little bit stagnant. It's very weird to explain, but if you go back and read it, you understand what I'm saying. It's like the story is moving forward, but it doesn't feel like anything's changing until Luffy does something and makes it change. But to be honest, those are the only harsh negatives about the East Blue Saga. Baratie and Arlong Park are some of the best parts in the entire series, and Log Town was perfect setup for the future. The writing in Baratie was phenomenal, has some of the best moments inside the series. I'm not saying he'll never lose again, and Sanji's conflicts definitely stand out inside that amazing arc, and Arlong Park, well, we got one of the most infamous panels in the entire series. Overall, the East Blue Saga does have its lows, but when it peaks, it definitely peaks. Next up is Return to Sabody and Fishman Island. Now the negatives here mainly come from the enjoyment section, as many, including myself, didn't feel like the Fishman Island arc was gripping enough in terms of enjoyment, but the writing, yeah, it was definitely great here. From learning about Queen Otohime to then finding out that Jinbei was sort of involved in Arlong Park and finding out why Arlong is the way he is today, this arc gave us a lot of great lore and a lot of great writing moments. The whole racism plotline where it's flipped and the humans were seen harassing the fishmen instead of the fishmen harassing the humans like in Arlong Park. Fishman Island is really well written, but its enjoyment factor did dip it down, and Holdy is a massive player into it. Now don't get it twisted, I'm not saying that Holdy's writing is bad, I'm just saying that as a villain he wasn't enjoyable since his strength was lacking, and a few other things just about his character didn't really entice a lot of people, and myself included. And as we know, a villain does make a massive impact on how you view the arc and just the enjoyment overall, so yeah, since I've covered them both now, why not I see which one is better. This round is gonna go to the East Blue Saga, and it's mainly due to its enjoyment factor. For writing, I'd definitely say they're comparable, but the enjoyment of the East Blue Saga far surpasses the enjoyment of Return to Sabody and Fishman Island. The peaks we got in the East Blue Saga were way better than the peaks that we got in Fishman Island and Return to Sabody, so I don't think there is anything too comparable, and I'd even say the lows are comparable as well, so yeah, it is 1-0 to Pre-Timeskip. Next up is Dressrosa and Alabasta, and these arcs don't really have any negatives, but they're still there, so I'm gonna cover them. The Alabasta saga covers everything from the start of the Grand Line to the end of Alabasta. So let's look at the flaws. And well, I don't think there is any major flaws. You could say the pace felt a tiny bit slow, but aside from that, there isn't anything terrible about them. It's just the pacing felt a little bit slow or needed to build up to something. So when we look at the positives, we really have to say what was really bad about this entire saga. Each island we visited gave us insight or just something that we can come back to in the future. For instance, the first arc gave us Laboon and Crocus, and as we know now, Crocus is a Roger pirate. Along with him, we have Laboon, who is also connected to Brook, a future Straw Hat pirate. On top of that, it then gave us a little hint into Baroque works. As you can see, already it gave us something that we could look forward to in the future, and then when you come back at this arc, you're like, okay, Oda did really lay out a lot of things here. Then following up on it, we have Whiskey Peak, and Whiskey Peak gave us Robin and Vivi, who are integral to the story. Later on down the line, Robin does become a Straw Hat and does lay out a lot of lore inside the One Piece verse, and Vivi starts off the Alabasta saga since she is the reason we have to go there and to save her country. Garden showed us the hierarchy of Baroque works with Mr. Free, and then showed us Mr. Zero, and it even gave us Elbaf on top of that. Drum Island introduced Chopper, Blackbeard Ace, and Wapol, while also giving us one of the best concepts inside of One Piece. Concept of your will living on even when you are dead is one of the greatest concepts to touch the series, as it even impacts the series to this day. And then when you add Chopper's storylines in the mix and he finds out that there are other outcasts like him in the world, yeah, Drum Island is extremely underrated in my eyes. And so finally we have Alabasta, and it was great. The country's conflicts, Crocodile's character, Sanji's shenanigans, and how the whole final acts played out. Alabasta was great, and it even gave us people like Bon Clay who will soon come to love. And so as a whole it was great, and this allows me to segue into Dressrosa. Now Dressrosa only has one major flaw, and it is mainly anime based, and I have to say it's the pacing. In the manga, the pacing didn't feel as bad, but the anime definitely made it feel even worse. Once you move past it though, there's no doubt that Dressrosa is great. Becca's backstory, Doflamingo invading Dressrosa, Doflamingo's backstory, Laurent Corazon's backstory, and then the fight. This arc was stacked, and this is me leaving out Fujitora and everything that happens in the back, so this arc just has a plethora of things that you can talk about. And Dressrosa definitely suffered from the I read it weekly or watched it weekly effects, because a lot of people do that to undermine the arc when the arc is really great. Go back and reread it or watch it and you just see that it's better. I do prefer reading it, since watching it, I'm not gonna lie, even now it does feel a little bit dragged out since they don't animate it properly, but yeah, reading it you'll feel totally different. This arc is definitely an arc you want to read over multiple times, since the themes and everything about it just comes out the more you read it. So yeah, I do recommend everybody rereading it. But putting that aside, let's see which one is better. Is it Dressrosa or is it Alabasta? And the winner is Dressrosa, and it's mainly due to Doflamingo's backstory. Crocodile was compelling, but Doflamingo was just different. I think overall, and especially due to Marineford, I like Crocodile a little bit more as a character than Doflamingo, but inside their own arcs, Doflamingo definitely felt better and more polarizing and more oppressive as a villain than Crocodile did. And because of that, I'm going to place Dressrosa above Alabasta. So this ties them up and makes it 1-1 for each side. And so moving on from those great arcs, we have Jaya and Skypiea versus Punk Hazard. And yes, this will be the only time that I switch two arcs around so they can match up, since Alabasta and Dressrosa happen around near the exact same time and they're both respective parts of the series, and it just felt a lot better to match them up. And yeah, they just felt better to put it like that. But moving on from that, let's talk about the negatives of Jaya and Skypiea. And the only negative here is the pacing. Aside from the pacing, Jaya and Skypiea felt really good. And I wouldn't even say that Jaya had bad pacing, it's mainly Skypiea with the bad pacing. Jaya was great in my eyes, but the slow pace of Skypiea to where it had to build up to the ending, it did feel like it took away a lot of things, especially because of the lore dumps in between. It felt like the arc was very slow paced, but when you read it back, it's like, oh no, I can see it. But when you're first reading it, it's like, yeah, this arc definitely does feel slow. But no, the writing on each arc was definitely phenomenal. So yeah, the positives definitely outweigh the negatives on Jaya and Skypiea. And so when you move into Punk Hazard and then you look at it as a whole, you definitely feel like the enjoyment factor of Punk Hazard wasn't there. Fishman Island and Punk Hazard definitely suffer from the exact same thing, and it's the fact that the villains aren't really that great, but the writing is really good. And the only thing I can say that Punk Hazard did do a little bit better than Fishman Island was it kicking off the Yonko saga. Aside from that, I feel like the writing we got inside of Fishman Island was way better in my eyes. We're not here to compare Punk Hazard against Fishman Island, we're here to compare it against Jaya and Skypiea, so which one is better? And I think it's pretty obvious at this point, it's Jaya and Skypiea. The peaks and the lows of Jaya and Skypiea far outclass the peaks and the lows of Punk Hazard, and I don't even think it's close. And so now that makes the scoreboard 2-1 to Pre-Timeskip. Next up is Lone Ring Longland vs Zoe, and I don't think I need to sit here and explain to you guys why Zoe is far better than Lone Ring Longland. Lone Ring Longland had like a few cool moments like with Sanji and Zoro teaming up, but can that really compare to all the things that happened inside of Zoe? In Zoe you had the Wano stuff that was dropped, you then even had the plot twist with Sanji. There's just a lot of things that Zoe did that Lone Ring Longland just can't compete with. So yes, this round does go to Zoe. And so this makes the score 2-2, making it a draw. Next up we have the two greatest arcs of each section of the story, and that is Water 7 / Enies Lobby versus Whole Cake Island. Now in my eyes this is going to be extremely complicated as these arcs have no real flaws. And if you have any problems towards Whole Cake, then I'm just going to assume that you read it weekly or you just don't like Sanji. I'm just going to keep it real with you. Both of these arcs were phenomenal from start to finish, so me finding which one is going to be the winner here is going to be a little bit hard. The winner of these two arcs comes down to personal preference. Do you prefer Sanji's conflict and backstory or Robin's? Do you prefer the symbolism of terrible parenting and childhood trauma, or the way they portray genocide and the two extremes of justice? There are many things I can compare with these two arcs as they are very similar but different at the exact same time. Both of these arcs do really well and they have great conflicts between the crew and show how Luffy matures. So while writing the script I was forced to take a breather to really find out which one I thought was better, and by the end of my thinking session I was like, I think I know which one's better. Out of these two great arcs, I think that Water 7 / Enies Lobby is better, and that is mainly due to the fights. Although One Piece is an adventure manga, it is also a battle shonen, and so when you really look at it like that, you're like, okay, yes, Luffy versus Katakuri was great, but you also had many different fights on Enies Lobby and they were great at that. And so Water 7 and Enies Lobby does win due to the fights, which does make this 3-2 to Pre-Timeskip. Next up is Thriller Bark vs Wano, and this is going to be a very interesting topic as both arcs are heavily misunderstood and scrutinized for no reason. Don't get me wrong though, they do have flaws, but at what they do, they're great at it. The flaws of these two arcs are different. While Thriller Bark lacks compelling villains, Wano's second act was questionable and the longevity of it does feel a little bit weird. Komori wasn't a great villain and his crew weren't great at all. After receiving CP9 and Baroque Works, I didn't think that Oda would take a step down in Gecko Moria and make him more like Foxy, Kuro, or even Orange Town Buggy. I just didn't think he would do that, but that is what we got inside of Gecko Moria. And so then we transition on to Wano's second act. I do feel like everything aside from Udon inside the second act was just fluff. My other video where I was ranking the post-timeskip, I said I didn't know what I wanted out of Wano's longevity, but now I think I have the answer. When it came up to 1040, I feel like everything past that point was just Oda trying to wrap it up quick because he wanted to move on. And then with the Beast Pirates, although I would say that Queen was probably the best written out of all of them, the rest of them just didn't feel as compelling as Kaido or Queen. King is somebody that I want to point the finger at because I feel like this could have been the first time we got on like a real opponent for Zoro. I say real because a lot of them do have really cool gimmicks or whatnot, but I wanted somebody that would challenge him inside of swordsmanship and would actually push him. I'm not saying that King didn't push Zoro, I just wanted King to do more as an antagonist for Zoro. I feel like this should have been the point where it's like you get somebody from a superior race and it's like all they do is say, oh yeah, I'm from a superior race, there's no way I can lose. We've seen that in the story before and Arlong did that way better than King, so I don't understand why people are very satisfied with it. To me, I feel like Sanji got a lot of really good writing when it comes to Queen and everything, and Queen was a great antagonist for Sanji, so I don't know why Zoro couldn't get that exact same help when it came to King. That's one of my more major gripes with the Onigashima raid and just Wano in general, but aside from that, Wano was really great and its peaks were definitely one of the best in the series. Before we talk about Wano's positives, let's talk about Thriller Bark's positives. While Thriller Bark was good because the Straw Hat's chemistry and comedy, Wano excelled at its main antagonist, fights and writing. Brook and Oden have really great backstories, but I think we all know which one is the better out of the two of them. Now don't get me wrong, in Wano there were really great Straw Hat chemistry moments, but I feel like in Thriller Bark it was just there, it just felt natural here. And the comedy is something that I love bringing up about Thriller Bark, since it feels like a very unserious arc where you're just meant to sit there and laugh at it because it does have a lot of funny moments. But then when you look at Wano, it's like Wano does have a lot of great things, and those great things do outweigh the great things inside of Thriller Bark. Having better writing, fights and antagonists, and especially the main antagonist, yeah, it does make me want to lean towards Wano a lot more. And if you watch my post-timeskip review video, you would know how I feel about Kaido, and you'll know that I would never ever compare it to Gecko Moria. They're not even in the exact same realm. So while they do excel at different things, I do believe that Wano just excels more. So winning this, we have Wano making this a tie at 3-3. Next up we have Sabody vs Reverie, and this is a very fun matchup as they are both small and give us hints into the exact same people who are the Celestial Dragons. Now although in both arcs are pretty much the exact same, the way they are shown and portrayed is going to be a little bit different. In Sabody they seem like pure evil and they say that they're on top of the world, while in the Reverie it kind of was like yeah they're on top of the world, but there is somebody on top of them that makes them even more scary. The reason I say they're different is because Emu and the Gorosei are the exact same type of people as the people below, but the difference is that they have actual power while Charlos and all the others don't really have power. So when Luffy is able to punch one and they're forced to send down Kizaru to deal with Luffy, it feels a lot different from them actually just being able to fight themselves and greatly wound somebody like Sabo, and that is why I say they're portrayed differently in each arc. When you sit back and look at these two arcs, you realize that they didn't do anything bad, so all you have to do is find out what they did and see which one did it better. And because of that, it's Sabody due to the Straw Hat's failure. The moment of Luffy losing is one of the greatest Luffy moments we've had inside the series. In my opinion, I still think it's the greatest Luffy moment. And the reason I believe it's Luffy's greatest moment is because this is the start of his downward spiral. Aside from all the people introduced and even Kuma's subtle foreshadowing, the Straw Hat splitting up and Luffy losing does make me place Sabody above the Reverie. And I know this is going to sound a little bit mad, but I do prefer the way how Sabody did approach slavery over how the Reverie did. And so winner of this is Sabody, making this 4-3 to Pre-Timeskip. And so last but not least, we have the Marineford Saga versus Egghead. Neither of these arcs have any downsides, and the only downside you could say that Egghead has is the Gorosei. But even then, you could say that they played their role really well. In both arcs, the admirals are heavily involved and show us two different sides of their jobs. In both scenarios, somebody needs to be executed, and in both scenarios, they are successful. But how it plays out and how it happens between the two is completely different. So now it forces you to choose as a viewer which one you preferred. Did you prefer the way Ace went out, or did you prefer the way Vegapunk went out? Did you prefer Akainu's absolute justice route, or did you prefer Kizaru's unclear route where he didn't know what to do? Did you prefer the rhyme we got with Ace, Whitebeard and Luffy and even side characters like Crocodile, or did you prefer Kuma's, Vegapunks and Bonnie's? Do you prefer how Marineford set up the future of One Piece and even taught Luffy a lesson, or do you prefer the way how Egghead set up the future of the final saga? Remember, Egghead does include Hachinosu and what happened with Shanks and Kid as well. A lot of these things did happen, and it's like when you look at these two arcs, you really have to sit back and be like, well, which one is better? Now, if Marineford and Egghead were to go bar for bar, I don't know which one I would prefer. That is something that I need to make a whole entire video on itself. But when you look at the whole Marineford saga, where it has Impel Down and Amazon Lily on top of it, yeah, the Marineford saga is better than Egghead. And with Amazon Lily and Impel Down, they don't do anything bad, they only do great things. So when you look at it as a whole, you're like, yeah, the Marineford saga is better than Egghead. So Marineford taking the dub, it does make it 5-3 to Pre-Timeskip, meaning Pre-Timeskip is better than Post-Timeskip. So with that being said, why don't I wrap up the whole video? In conclusion, Pre-Timeskip is better than Post-Timeskip, but this could be down to preference at this point, as I do believe they are very close. And so for right now, I still do believe that Pre-Timeskip is better than Post-Timeskip, but in the near future, I wouldn't be surprised if Post-Timeskip does surpass it. Due to all the setups throughout the story, I do believe that the further we get into Post-Timeskip, the better it will become, because all Oden really needs to do is just execute and deliver on all of his stuff that he's already planned. So that is why I believe that by the end of the story, we're going to be saying that Post-Timeskip is leagues better than Pre-Timeskip. But yeah, I did enjoy making this video. I do have a little surprise for this video and the other videos that will come soon. It's gonna drop in like a week or two. You guys will know what it is when it drops, and you guys will be like, oh, okay, I see. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, then you know to hit that like button and subscribe. And yeah, thank you for all the support of late. And yeah, I shall see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.